Hello and welcome back to Seconds Out. My name is Eamon Khan here with journalist and insider Donagh Corby. Donagh, how you doing, sir?
Insider, I hardly know her. How are you, Eamon?
Yeah, well, again, all the better to speak to you. And you're on the street, you're on the beat covering Jake Paul versus Nate Diaz. I want to get into that in just a second, but in the influencer scene, we've had a bit of a development. The first, I guess, of its kind, if I'm right in saying this, Viruzz has tested positive for using performance-enhancing substances subsequent to his fight against DK Money. What's the situation here?
Yeah, I mean, first off, it's pronounced Virus, because he's Spanish, so your V is pronounced like a B, and then he's got the multiple Z's, so it's Virus. But no, yeah, well, I'll say virus too, because that's how I would pronounce it. But yeah, he's basically, he's tested positive for a banned substance. I believe there's going to be an official decision made on Monday by the PBA. I think it's come through a little bit too late for a decision today, but I would imagine it'll get overturned to a no contest. DK Money, I believe I was reading he may get some of, like, I think he may have had a deal that involved win money. Like, it wasn't a 100%, kind of a deal in that sense. So yeah, I think that it will greatly benefit DK Money. I mean, it's it is the first of its kind, and it's very serious because that fight in particular was quite vicious, quite brutal. Both of them, like DK Money put a beating on that lad too, but DK Money took some serious. I hate that name, DK Money, by the way. I'd much prefer to just call him, Dakota, which is his name. But he really put a beating on Virus, but he took some major shots. He got knocked out, he got put down, and it's very, very dangerous what that guy was doing. So if he's tested positive, then they really need to throw the book at him, and it's another person who I guess Misfits can't have back.
I listened to the Twitter sphere in the subsequent hours
Mm-hmm.
after this announcement, and I feel like there's an opportunity here for influencer boxing to step ahead of traditional boxing because one, already got more details than we usually have
Mm-hmm.
in these sort of cases in boxing, and two, there's an opportunity to kind of throw the book and maybe make an example of Virus if they choose to do so. In a sphere in which there's a lot of young adults watching
Yeah.
their heroes, as it were.
No, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, they will need to come down, as hard as they can. It's like I say, it's a very, very serious thing to do. It's very, very dangerous. I think people don't understand because of influencer boxing and like it's a low standard or whatever else. That's part of the issue is these guys are wearing 10-ounce gloves. They're very low level to be wearing gloves like that. They're very low level to be competing over 3-minute rounds. And if guys are taking performance enhancers, then it's a serious issue that needs to. And people will say, "Oh, it's a misfits or whatever," but like this guy was kind of a newcomer. He had boxed, in Spain previously on La Velada del Año, I think it's called. I'm not sure if I've got that name right, but a big Spanish event, and that's where his kind of market was. He was brand new to Misfits, and it was a super exciting fight of the night for sure. But it's completely unacceptable. It's a scene that can't really take any more stuff like this, and this is a lot more serious than like people flashing or throwing turkey hot dogs at people or whatever like that. Like, not that those are not serious issues, but this is very, very serious. You've got the health of these guys on the line, and yeah, you're right, they need to throw the book at them.
And moving on to the fight you're here in question for, you called it in the first instance Jake Paul versus Nate Diaz. You said he was moving towards that direction, and he has now. First thing I want to ask is this standard, usual fare from what we're seeing from Nate? He seems on the surface,
No.
I know a little bit about Nate from his UFC days, but he seems a little bit reserved in terms of the press conferences and his media obligations.
Yeah, so I would have to imagine, to answer your question, like, long story short, is no, it's not usual Nate Diaz fare. But I would imagine that he has come in with the mindset of don't let Jake Paul play Jake Paul's game. So it's very different than, fighting Leon Edwards or Tony Ferguson, Conor McGregor, Jorge Masvidal, any of these guys. It's he doesn't want to get sucked into the silliness. He certainly doesn't want to become an influencer boxer. I know that. And yeah, I think that it has been a quiet build-up from Nate, but he got wound up yesterday, didn't he? Better Derek, rightly or wrongly, by the way, wound him up, and then he dropped a couple of words he can't say. There's a few that are you could say FUCK, or you could say something like that on these things, and you'll get a slap on the wrist. They'll say we apologize for the language, but there are a couple of words that you can't drop. We can't do the apology for the language on those, and that was one of them that Nate said yesterday. So that was, an issue. But other than that, yeah, it's been a very strange build-up from Nate. They announced it so early. I was just talking about this on Mirror Fighting's podcast. It's kind of something that is strange. They announced it so early on. I think April they announced it for August, which is a very long time to be promoting, and the buzz online is not, what I'm sure they were expecting. However, I've been saying this to people as well. The buzz in Dallas, Texas is sick. You go to these events and they're packed out. The queue is around the block at the factory in Deep Ellum where they've held the open workout and the press conference. It is jointed in there, and they've sold a lot of tickets. I believe it's the second highest selling fight event in American Airlines Center history. It's been around 22 years, I think, the venue. So there is interest. Just is there as much as maybe there could have been with these two big names?
Now, I would have said in my answer to my own question that I'm going to ask you here, I would offer you freshness, but that's up to debate in terms of what does Nate Diaz offer to Jake Paul that Anderson Silva doesn't offer? Because that Silva was a little bit older, but he hasn't maybe taken the licks that Diaz has taken in his fight. So what is the crux of the fight here for Jake Paul and Nate Diaz?
It's a great question. I suppose the answer is star power. Like, Nate is one of those gargantuan stars. He's headlined 2 pay-per-views that did over 1 million buys. I believe his fight with Jorge Masvidal, the number's not officially out there. I'm not breaking any news. There's just a rumored number that's in the region of 750,000. So, and that was him in the headline without Conor McGregor. So he's a monster pay-per-view draw. There's so much interest in him. It's his first fight outside of the UFC. It's been over a decade and a half since he last fought anywhere else. And he's been, locked into this restrictive UFC deal. He didn't fight for 3 years, he was telling me, because there was nothing he could do outside of the promotion. And he didn't fancy fighting any of the people inside of it. So, he's just an enigma. He's a star of massive consequence. And I think that's what they were signing up for. And obviously there's the kind of storyline that can continue with it. So yeah, he brings a lot to the table, I think, and a lot more than Anderson Silva, who's of course a legend. I mean, I was saying this to Jake the other day. You fought people better. Like, Anderson Silva's better. Tyron Woodley's if you look at his resume, he won a lot more big fights. He beat a lot more big names. I'm sure in the peak of both of their careers, Tyron Woodley would have very much been fancied over Nate Diaz at both of their primes. So, Jake has fought some better people. Ben Askren would have given Nate Diaz a very good fight in MMA. So obviously he's not a boxer, he can't box, but it was there's a huge name involved with Nate Diaz, one of the UFC's biggest.
Win or lose for Nate Diaz, he said as much as, look, he's looking to return to the UFC and fight the UFC's top stars. Is that in the trajectory and path for Nate Diaz? You feel whatever the outcome?
Yeah, I think that probably makes a bit of sense. And I don't know that he's exactly targeting top stars in the sense of he's going to go back and fight Leon Edwards. Or I guess he just weighed in at 185 today and used the towel. So needed all 15 of those extra pounds. But he... I don't think he's going to be going out and trying to fight, although he did say Adesanya is a great champion, but I don't think he's going to be trying to fight, the winner of Adesanya and Sean Strickland or anything, assuming that fight happens. So I guess he'll go back. I mean, the Conor McGregor trilogy is very much, people have been describing it like this, and it is rightly or wrongly, and it's very funny that people are using this analogy, but it is very much like what Jake has with KSI, where Jake could lose 10 fights and KSI could lose 10 fights, and people would still want to see that. And it's the same with Conor and Nate. Conor's won, even since he beat Nate, he's won twice. He beat Eddie Alvarez for the lightweight title, became 2-weight champion. And then he lost to Khabib, lost to Floyd, beat Cowboy Cerrone, and then lost twice to Poirier with huge gaps in between as well. So there's a lot of options for Nate. He's a huge star. He could do an exhibition with Floyd. I mean, Floyd does exhibitions with these guys all the time, and that would be a monster draw. So there are definitely things that Nate can do. I'm sure if Nate's people went to KSI and said, "Hey, we're thinking about this," I'm sure KSI would love that as well. So he has a lot of things on the table. But going back to the UFC seems to make a lot of sense.
Jake Paul inexplicably linked with KSI until the two meet in the ring. KSI has announced that he's taking on Tommy Fury October 14th, the former opponent of Jake Paul. He's looking to go one better than Jake Paul did do. What are the details? And I wonder if you do know. I asked Mams Taylor in the aftermath of the Joe Fournier fight, and said, will there be a rematch clause for this one? He said he's confident in his fighter and they wouldn't want to put one in. Is there one? Do you know?
Rematch clause, I believe, for I don't know all the details, but I think that if KSI loses, there's a it's kind of like Eddie Hearn always says, when the answer to that question is no, he'll say, well, in the right circumstances. So I think if KSI loses and it's somewhat close and he really fancies getting it back, then I'm sure Tommy Fury will have no problem with getting a couple of million to go and fight another YouTuber.
But a good fight in prospect. What do you rate of KSI's chances against Tommy? Do you think he has a better chance than Jake?
No, I don't think so. I mean, I don't think it's. I mean, you say a great fight. It's going to be entertaining in the build-up, and it's got a great story behind it and all of that. I think when you look at the nose and the punches and the defensive maneuvers, it's really not necessarily that great of a fight on paper, which is what makes it more exciting. You know what I mean? Like it's a fight where KSI is a monster underdog. He's never been a bigger underdog in his whole career. And that's what makes it so exciting. I don't think he has a shot. I don't think he has a chance. But that's why people will buy it. Because people don't think he has a chance. People haven't thought he doesn't have a chance since he fought Logan. And there were people who thought he would beat Logan. There are very few people who think he's going to beat Tommy Fury. It's a huge step up. In this comeback run that he's done, there's been no jeopardy. He was never going to lose to Swarms. He was never going to lose to Luis Pineda. He was never going to lose to Face Temper. And despite what a killer he is, WBA champion, international champion, top 15 ranked, he was never going to lose to Joe Fournier either. So I think it's very exciting, but it's not that great of a fight. And that's what makes it exciting. We finally get to see KSI in there with someone who he's a real huge underdog against.
My brain's going a bit loopy here, but am I correct in saying Logan Paul hasn't got a confirmed opponent just yet? Have you heard anything on that?
Yeah, no confirmed opponent yet. I mean, the word that's out there, once again, I'm not breaking any news. I'm not giving any insider information when I say the word that's out there is that it'll be Dylan Dennis and it'll be announced on Sunday, but that's not like a thing I've heard from any sources or anything. And that's not confirmed. But I certainly don't think it would be wise for Misfits to go in that direction, given how the KSI thing played out and Dennis's career to date. But he's a great promoter and he's a lot of fun, and he's obviously inserted himself into Jake Paul fight week with these Shane Mosley DMs. So I think I guess they'll go that direction, but nothing announced yet. And Logan is another one like KSI who could kind of fight a broomstick and people would go and watch it.
Final couple of things, and I'll let you go, Donagh. Look, Tyson Fury's taking on Francis Ngannou in what we believe to be an actual fight, with the details being given out by Queensbury, and it's not an exhibition. Over in the boxing side, boxing fans or at least the hardcore boxing fans, aren't too happy that Fury is not taking on someone who's ranked in the WBC rankings and defending his belt. Whereas maybe the feeling is over in the UFC or MMA side, they're quite happy for Francis to get this opportunity.
Absolutely. I mean, Francis Ngannou, you'll do a million interviews in the build-up to this, and everyone will give you this exact answer I'm about to give you, which is his story is unbelievable. From sleeping in a stairwell. Like, people will give you all of these exact examples I'm about to give you, by the way. For a lot of this, we've got 2 months until the fight. Prepare to hear this exact story 20 billion times when you speak to anyone. His story is unbelievable. From, the streets of Cameroon all the way over to France to become a boxer. Came to France to be a boxer, got into MMA because of, his coaches and the different opportunities, got to the UFC, was consistently mistreated in the UFC, paid, I believe the disclosed purse was $600,000 for a packed out Kia Forum in Los Angeles, headliner on pay-per-view, heavyweight title defense. And then he got out of there. He appears to have beat the house, which is almost unheard of in MMA. Nate Diaz kind of did it by getting this boxing fight, but Francis Ngannou is involved now in a monumental bout. And by the way, it's like way more of a competitive fight than Conor versus Floyd was, because Tyson Fury, first off, the old chestnut of it, heavyweight boxing. And Tyson Fury has been hit before. He's been down before. He's had fights that he hasn't won before. He drew with Deontay Wilder. And that's not to say that Francis Ngannou is the boxer that Deontay Wilder is, but he's certainly the power puncher. He certainly can hit extremely hard. And over 10 rounds, if Tyson doesn't get him out of there quickly, he can't allow Francis Ngannou to land the few shots that Floyd allowed Conor to land. So it'll be really, really, exciting. And I think, like you say, the boxing purists don't love it. The MMA fans are all for it because Francis Ngannou is a complete superstar, and finally people are learning that.
Yeah, indeed, there is a sense of jeopardy, and Tyson Fury can't crunch himself when it comes to a potential opportunity for fighting for the undisputed heavyweight titles in the future against Alexander Usyk, who has his own fight against Daniel Dubois in the future coming up to August 26th. Final thing, the last thing I wanted to touch on is another social media star in Bryce Hall is jumping over to bare knuckle this time around against Perez on August the 11th. Is this another new innovation for social media combat fighting? And what do you expect to kind of be the amount of eyes glued onto Bryce Hall's efforts?
Well, Bryce is taking on an extremely strange task. I said this to him like the other day straight up. I was like, bro, you're a handsome guy and your looks are a big part of your appeal, and they will change. Like he was telling me, I don't think I'm going to get cut up. I was like, the winners get cut up in these fights. Like the winners get mangled too. It's not just the loser who gets mangled. These fights are vicious. They're violent. No gloves. I mean, it's such a huge talking point in influencer boxing. Will there be 10 ounce gloves or there'll be 12 ounce gloves? This guy's not wearing any at all. He's going to Albuquerque, New Mexico, one of these states that allows bare knuckle boxing, and he's fighting G. Perez, an undefeated fighter. And G. Perez is putting on, I believe, something in the region of 40 pounds to get up and weight for this fight. So I guess Bryce is getting something of an advantage there. Like I'm sure that Perez probably won't be getting hit by people who are 40 pounds heavier, and Bryce obviously a big, muscular guy and everything. So it's exciting. I can't wait to go. I can't believe I'm getting to go. It's going to be, I'm sure, a chaotic week. Bryce he knows how to promote. He knows how to excite people. And I think it's not an innovation. Like the reason why he's fighting a bare knuckle fighter is because there wasn't an influencer on the planet, even a real big clout chaser, like Beg, like a guy, like someone, like I'm not going to say any names, but like someone who's like really desperate to get on a fight or whatever, even they won't do bare knuckle. They just won't risk it. So it's not something that's going to stick around very long, I wouldn't think. But Bryce Hall certainly is ballsy, and he wants the big boxing fights in the influencer world. He's been out for 2 years since his loss to Austin McBroom, and he's now available. He's open for business, and he wants on Misfits in October as well.
Well, I'm getting the virtual tap on the arm or shoulder saying Donagh Corby isn't much more available for any longer. So we'll wrap it up there. Donagh, real pleasure speaking to you. I'm hoping to catch up with you in the aftermath of the fight or in the future as well, too. I'm sure we will. But thank you for speaking to Seconds Out.